I went to my fiancé's funeral. I watched them lower his coffin into the ground. I threw dirt on the lid and collapsed in my mother's arms. I wore black for a year. I slept with his photograph under my pillow. I visited his grave every Sunday for 3 years. Then I saw him standing in line at a Starbucks in San Diego, holding hands with a pregnant woman, wearing a wedding ring, and laughing like he hadn't destroyed my entire life. He looked directly at me. Our eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. Then he turned around and walked out the back door, leaving his coffee on the counter, leaving his pregnant wife confused, leaving me frozen in the middle of a crowded coffee shop wondering if I had finally lost my mind. I hadn't lost my mind. I had found my dead fiancé, and he had been alive the whole time. My name is Celine. I was engaged to a man named Daniel Ashford for 2 years. We met at a friend's wedding in June 2018. We moved in together after 8 months. He proposed on Christmas Eve 2019 with a ring that cost $18,000. A ring I later learned he bought with a credit card in my name. I said yes because I loved him. I said yes because I thought he loved me. I said yes because I had no idea I was engaged to a professional con artist who had already faked his death twice before meeting me. Daniel died on March 3, 2021. That's what I believed for 3 years. A car accident on Highway 101. Vehicle went off a cliff during a rainstorm. Body recovered but badly burned. Identification confirmed through dental records. The police called me at 7:43 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was making coffee, his favorite blend, planning to surprise him with breakfast in bed. Instead, a detective's voice told me that my fiancé's car had been found at the bottom of a ravine, and that I should come to the station to answer some questions. The questions felt routine at the time. When did I last see Daniel? What was his state of mind? Did he have any enemies? I answered everything in a fog, unable to process what was happening, unable to accept that the man I was supposed to marry in 4 months was now a body in a morgue. They showed me his personal effects recovered from the crash. His wallet, his watch, the Rolex I had given him for his birthday, his phone cracked but recognizable. They asked me to identify the body. I couldn't. The fire had been too severe. They said dental records confirmed it was him. I had no reason to doubt them. Why would I? Dead people don't come back to life. Except Daniel wasn't dead. He was just getting started. The funeral was March 10, 2021. 200 people attended. Daniel had been popular, charming, the kind of man who made everyone feel like his best friend. His mother sobbed through the entire service. His sister delivered a eulogy that made strangers cry. I sat in the front row wearing a black dress and the engagement ring that now felt like a shackle, wondering how I was supposed to live the rest of my life without him. After the burial, people came to our apartment, his apartment really, the lease was in his name, and ate sandwiches and told stories about Daniel and looked at me with pity I couldn't stand. By 9 p.m. everyone was gone. I lay on our bed, clutched his pillow, and screamed into it until my throat was raw. I did that every night for 6 months. The first year was survival. Just getting through each day without falling apart completely. I took a leave of absence from my job as a marketing coordinator because I couldn't concentrate on anything. I lived on savings and condolence cards with cash inside. I went to grief counseling twice a week, where a therapist named Dr. Morrison helped me understand that what I was feeling was normal, that losing a partner before your wedding was one of the most traumatic experiences a person could endure, that healing would take time. I didn't want to heal. Healing felt like forgetting, and I wasn't ready to forget Daniel. The second year was slightly better. I went back to work part-time, then full-time. I started socializing again, dinner with friends, drinks with coworkers, small interactions that reminded me I was still alive even if Daniel wasn't. I stopped visiting his grave every Sunday and reduced it to once a month. I packed away some of his things but kept his favorite sweater hanging in my closet where I could see it every morning. I wasn't moving on exactly, but I was moving forward slowly, one painful step at a time. The third year was supposed to be a turning point. My therapist said the third year was often when grief began to loosen its grip, when life started to feel possible again. I was 34 years old, single, childless, but still young enough to rebuild. My friends encouraged me to try dating apps. My mother gently suggested I might want to take off my engagement ring. I wasn't ready for either, but I was starting to imagine a future that didn't include Daniel. A future where I could be happy again without feeling guilty about it. I had no idea that my future was about to include Daniel after all, just not in the way I expected. The trip to San Diego was supposed to be a fresh start. March 2024, exactly 3 years after Daniel's funeral. My best friend Kayla had moved there for work, and she had been begging me to visit for months. She said the sunshine would be good for me. She said I needed to get out of the apartment where everything reminded me of Daniel. She said a change of scenery might help me finally close this chapter. I booked a flight, packed a suitcase, and told myself this was the beginning of the rest of my life. I was right, but not in the way I expected. The Starbucks was on 5th Avenue, downtown San Diego, 3 blocks from Kayla's apartment. I walked in at 10:17 a.m. on March 5, 2024, 4 days after the 3rd anniversary of Daniel's death. I was thinking about nothing in particular, just the caffeine I needed after a late night catching up with Kayla. The line was long. I scrolled through my phone while waiting, and then I looked up. He was standing near the pickup counter. Brown hair slightly longer than he used to wear it. Same height, same build, same way of standing with his weight shifted to his left leg. He was wearing a navy blue polo shirt and khaki shorts, casual clothes I had never seen before. Next to him was a woman, brunette, visibly pregnant, maybe 7 or 8 months along. She was laughing at something he said. He had his arm around her waist. On his left hand was a gold wedding band that caught the California sunlight. I stopped breathing. Actually stopped. My lungs locked, my heart stuttered. My brain short-circuited trying to process what my eyes were seeing. Couldn't be him. Daniel was dead. Daniel had been dead for 3 years. I had attended his funeral. I had thrown dirt on his grave. I had cried over his headstone so many times that I had memorized every letter of his name carved in granite. Dead people don't drink coffee. Dead people don't get married. Dead people don't stand in Starbucks holding hands with pregnant women, while their ex-fiancés watch from across the room. He turned his head. Our eyes met, and I saw recognition flash across his face, followed immediately by terror. 2 seconds. That's all it lasted. 2 seconds of eye contact that confirmed everything I didn't want to believe. Then he said something to the pregnant woman, handed her his phone, and walked quickly toward the back of the store. By the time I pushed through the line to follow him, he was gone. Out a service entrance. Vanished. Again. I stood in that Starbucks for maybe 5 minutes, unable to move, unable to think, unable to do anything except shake. The pregnant woman was looking around, confused, holding his phone, calling a name I didn't recognize. Derek? Derek, where did you go? Derek. Not Daniel. He had a new name now. A new wife. A new life. A new identity built on the grave I had been visiting for 3 years. I didn't tell anyone what I saw. Not that day. I went back to Kayla's apartment and sat on her couch and stared at the wall for 4 hours until she came home from work and found me catatonic. I told her I wasn't feeling well. I said I needed to go home early. I booked a flight for the next morning and spent the entire night Googling Daniel Ashford plus alive plus fake death, plus every other search term I could think of. I found nothing. Of course I found nothing. He had planned this too carefully. He had planned everything too carefully. That's what con artists do. The investigation started when I got home. Not a police investigation, not yet, but my own obsessive research into the man I thought I was going to marry. I hired a private investigator named Marcus Webb, a former FBI agent who specialized in fraud cases. He cost $350 per hour. I didn't care. I needed to know the truth. I needed to know if I was crazy or if Daniel Ashford had really faked his death and started over with a new identity, while I spent 3 years mourning at his empty grave. Marcus found him within 2 weeks. Derek Simmons, age 37, resident of San Diego, California, married to Jennifer Simmons née Patterson for 11 months, expecting their first child in April 2024. Former Daniel Ashford, age 34, declared dead on March 3, 2021, following a single vehicle accident on Highway 101. Same man. Same fingerprints, pulled from a glass Derek had left at a restaurant where Marcus had followed him. Same face, confirmed through facial recognition software that matched Daniel's driver's license photo with surveillance footage from Derek's workplace. Same monster wearing a different mask. The details of the fraud emerged slowly, each revelation worse than the last. Daniel hadn't just faked his death. He had been planning it for over a year before the accident. He had taken out a life insurance policy worth $750,000 6 months after we got engaged, naming his mother as the primary beneficiary. He had secretly accumulated $127,000 in debt using credit cards opened in my name, charges I never saw because he intercepted the mail before I could find them. He had transferred $43,000 from our joint savings account into offshore accounts I didn't know existed. He had systematically looted my financial life while telling me he loved me, while planning our wedding while sleeping next to me every night. The car accident was staged. Marcus figured this out by tracking down the body shop that had prepared Daniel's vehicle for the crash. The car had been modified to catch fire on impact, destroying evidence and making identification difficult. The body in the car wasn't Daniel's. It was a homeless man named Robert Chun, 54 years old, who had died of natural causes in a shelter 2 days before the accident. Daniel had paid a morgue employee $15,000 to provide the body and falsify the dental records that confirmed Daniel Ashford's death. Robert Chun had no family to claim him, no one to notice he was missing, no one to care that his corpse was being used as a prop in someone else's disappearing act. Daniel's mother knew. That was the part that broke me. Margaret Ashford, the sweet woman who had sobbed at her son's funeral, who had hugged me and called me the daughter she never had, who had visited me regularly in the first year after Daniel's death to check on me and bring me casseroles. She had known her son was alive the entire time. She had collected the $750,000 life insurance payout and transferred half of it to Daniel's offshore accounts within 3 months of the funeral. She had lied to my face, held my hand while I cried, accepted my grief as genuine while knowing her son was alive and well and starting over somewhere warm. She was his accomplice. She was his partner. She was the reason he had gotten away with it for 3 years. I went to the police on April 1, 2024. April Fool's Day. The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat in a detective's office and laid out everything Marcus had discovered. The fake death, the insurance fraud, the identity theft, the stolen body, the accomplice mother, the new life in San Diego. Detective Reyes listened without interrupting, took notes, asked clarifying questions, and then told me something that made my blood run cold. "This isn't the first time he's done this," she said. "We've been looking for this guy for 8 years. Daniel Ashford wasn't his real name. His real name was Michael Brennan, born in Ohio in 1984, first arrested for fraud at age 19. He had a pattern. Find a vulnerable woman, preferably one with good credit and some savings. Court her, charm her, make her fall in love. Get engaged but never actually married because marriage created legal complications. Rack up debt in her name, drain her accounts, take out insurance policies. Then stage a death, collect the money through a family member accomplice and disappear. He had done it before me. A woman named Sandra in Phoenix, 2012. A woman named Michelle in Portland, 2016. Both had lost everything. Both had mourned men who never existed. Both had been too ashamed to report what happened when they eventually discovered the truth. I was the third victim. Jennifer Simmons, the pregnant wife in San Diego, was positioned to be the fourth. The arrest happened on April 17, 2024. San Diego police coordinated with federal authorities because the crimes crossed state lines. They picked him up at his office, a real estate agency where he worked under his new identity, surrounded by coworkers who had no idea they were employed alongside a serial con artist and grave robber. I wasn't there for the arrest, but Detective Reyes called me afterward to let me know it was done. She said he hadn't resisted. She said he had been calm, almost resigned, like he had always known this day would come eventually. She said he asked about me. "How's Celine?" Like we were old friends catching up. Like he hadn't stolen 3 years of my life and $170,000 of my money. Like he hadn't made me cry over an empty coffin while he was probably lying on a beach somewhere spending my savings. The trial was in October 2024. I testified for 2 days. I described meeting Daniel, falling in love, planning a wedding that would never happen. I described the phone call from the police, the funeral, the years of grief therapy, the grave I visited every Sunday. I described seeing him in San Diego, the 2 seconds of eye contact, the terror in his face when he realized his past had caught up to him. I described the financial devastation, the credit cards in my name, the drained savings account, The years I spent rebuilding my credit score while he was living comfortably on money he stole from me. I cried on the stand. I hadn't planned to, but once the tears started, I couldn't stop them. 3 years of grief, 3 years of mourning a man who never died, came pouring out in a courtroom full of strangers. Jennifer Simmons was in the gallery, the pregnant woman from the Starbucks, though she wasn't pregnant anymore. She had given birth in April, a baby girl named Emma, born to a father who was arrested 3 days later. Jennifer looked at me throughout my testimony with an expression I couldn't read. Hatred? Sympathy? Disbelief? Later, I would learn that she had been completely blindsided by Derek's arrest. She had believed everything he told her. She had thought she was married to a loving husband with a normal past, not a serial con artist with 2 fake deaths and at least 3 destroyed women behind him. In a way, she was a victim too. But she still got to have his baby, still got to have the family I was supposed to have, still got something out of the wreckage even if it wasn't what she expected. Margaret Ashford, Daniel's mother, was arrested as an accomplice. She pleaded guilty to insurance fraud and received 18 months in federal prison plus an order to pay restitution. She wrote me a letter from prison, a long rambling thing about how Daniel had manipulated her, how she had never meant to hurt me, how she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive her someday. I didn't respond. Some things are unforgivable. Holding someone's hand at your son's fake funeral, while knowing he's alive and counting stolen money, is one of them. Daniel or Michael or Derek or whatever name he was using in his own head, was convicted on 17 counts including insurance fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy, and desecration of human remains for what he did to Robert Chen's body. He received 23 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 15 years. At sentencing, the judge called him a predator who exploited love as a weapon, and a man without conscience who left a trail of destroyed lives for personal gain. Daniel didn't react. He just stared straight ahead with the same calm expression he had worn throughout the trial, like none of this affected him, like we were all just characters in a story he was watching rather than living. I was awarded $347,000 in restitution, the amount authorities were able to recover from his various accounts. It wasn't everything he stole, but it was something. More importantly, the insurance company that had paid out $750,000 on Daniel's fake death was forced to drop their investigation into me. For months after I reported Daniel alive, they had treated me as a suspect, wondering if I had been part of the scheme, threatening to sue me for the money his mother had collected. The trial cleared my name completely. I wasn't a co-conspirator. I was a victim. The distinction mattered more than I expected it to. The aftermath of discovering Daniel's fraud was different from the aftermath of his fake death. When he died, I was devastated but not angry. I was grieving a man I loved, mourning a future we would never have. When I learned the truth, devastation was replaced by rage. Rage at him for using me. Rage at his mother for lying to me. Rage at myself for not seeing the signs, for trusting so completely, for being so desperate to believe I had found love that I ignored every red flag. The rage kept me awake at night. It made me snap at friends and coworkers. It turned me into someone I didn't recognize and didn't like. Therapy helped eventually. Different therapy this time, focused on trauma and betrayal rather than grief. Dr. Morrison, my old grief counselor, referred me to a specialist in partner deception. Apparently there are enough victims of romance fraud to warrant an entire specialty. That fact is both comforting and horrifying. The other victims reached out to me after the trial. Sandra from Phoenix sent a Facebook message thanking me for pursuing the case when she had been too ashamed to do it herself. Michelle from Portland called me directly crying, saying she had spent 8 years thinking she was the only one, believing her own judgment was so flawed that she could fall for a con that elaborate. We talked for 3 hours that first call. We still talk regularly now. We formed a support group of sorts, 3 women bound together by the same man's lies, trying to rebuild our lives in the wreckage he left behind. We call ourselves Michael's Widows. Dark humor that helps us cope. None of us are actually widows, of course. You can't be a widow if your husband never existed in the first place. Jennifer Simmons divorced Derek as soon as she could file the papers. She has full custody of Emma. She moved back to her hometown in Minnesota, and is being supported by her family while she processes what happened to her. We've exchanged a few emails. She apologized for the part she unknowingly played, For being the pregnant woman I saw in Starbucks. For being the life Daniel was building while I was still mourning him. I told her it wasn't her fault. It wasn't any of our faults. The only person responsible for what Daniel did was Daniel. Blaming ourselves just gives him more power over us. And he's taken enough already. The grave is still there. Daniel Ashford's headstone still stands in Pleasant Valley Cemetery, still displays the dates I memorized, still accepts the flowers that occasional visitors leave without knowing the coffin beneath it is empty. The cemetery offered to remove it after the trial, but I asked them to leave it. Not as a memorial to Daniel but as a reminder to myself. A reminder that things are not always what they appear to be. A reminder that love can be a weapon as easily as a gift. A reminder that I survived something that was designed to destroy me. And I'm still here, still standing, still capable of visiting a grave without falling apart. I don't visit often anymore. Once a year maybe. On March 3rd, the anniversary of his fake death, I stand in front of the headstone and I talk to him, not because I believe he can hear me, but because I need to say the words out loud. I tell him about my life, the life I rebuilt from the ashes of the one he burned down. I tell him about my new job, my new apartment, my new relationship with a man named Tyler who knows my entire history and loves me anyway. I tell him that I'm happy, genuinely happy, for the first time since before I met him. And then I tell him that I hope prison is hell, that I hope he spends every day of his 23-year sentence thinking about the women he destroyed, and that I hope he never gets the chance to do this to anyone ever again. It has been 18 months since I saw Daniel in that Starbucks. 18 months since my dead fiancé came back to life and blew apart everything I thought I knew about my past. I am 36 years old now. I am not the same person I was when Daniel died. I'm not the same person I was when I discovered he was alive. I am someone new, forged in the fire of betrayal and rebuilt from the ground up. I trust less easily now. I verify more thoroughly. I check credit reports and background histories and I ask questions that my younger self would have thought were paranoid. But I'm also stronger. I'm also wiser. I'm also proof that you can survive being conned by someone you loved, even when the con lasted years, even when it involved your own funeral attendance. If you're reading this and something feels wrong in your relationship, please listen to that feeling. Please check the things that should be checkable. Credit reports, employment histories, social media histories, past addresses. It feels invasive to verify someone you love, but it's more invasive to wake up one day and discover that person never existed. I wish someone had told me to verify Daniel. I wish I had been suspicious enough to look beneath the surface. But I was in love, and love makes you stupid, and predators count on that stupidity to do their work. Daniel's sentence ends in 2047, assuming he serves the full term. He'll be 63 years old, still young enough to start over, still charming enough to find another victim, still ruthless enough to destroy another life. I don't know if I'll be told when he's released. I don't know if I'll still care by then. What I know is that somewhere in a federal prison, a man I once loved is counting the days until he can try again. And somewhere in the world, a woman who hasn't met him yet is living her life without any idea what's coming for her. I can't save her. I can only tell my story and hope she recognizes the signs before it's too late. The too perfect romance. The rushed engagement. The financial entanglements that seem innocent but aren't. The gaps in history that get explained away with charming stories. The man who seems too good to be true because he literally is. These are the warning signs. These are the breadcrumbs that lead to the trap. I followed them all the way to a funeral I shouldn't have attended and a grave I shouldn't have visited and 3 years of grief I shouldn't have experienced. Don't follow them. Don't trust blindly. Don't be me. My name is Celine. I attended my fiancé's funeral. I watched them lower an empty coffin into the ground. I mourned a man who was alive the whole time, stealing my money, planning his next life, laughing at my grief from wherever he was hiding. I found him 3 years later standing in a Starbucks, holding hands with his pregnant wife, living the life he told me he wanted with me. And then I helped put him in prison for 23 years. That's not revenge exactly. Revenge would mean I got back what he took from me. I didn't. The money is mostly gone. The years are definitely gone. The innocence I had before I met him will never return. But I got something else. I got the satisfaction of watching him sit in a courtroom while a judge called him a predator. I got the knowledge that he'll spend the next 2 decades in a cell thinking about the women he underestimated. I got the community of survivors who found me after the trial and showed me I wasn't alone. And I got the chance to rebuild my life on a foundation of truth instead of lies. That's enough. It has to be enough. Because it's all I have.